can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So, so welcome. Thank you. This is your first time on our stage and at our conference, I think. And also, I just wanted to say that I feel like I'm up here with Corey Stoll, because you look very much like Corey Stoll from House of Cards, but hopefully a better fate.
I must say I've never seen the show, so I'll have to ask my wife.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, it's fine then. Okay. You'll be fine. Okay. So, first of all, congratulations on your deals with Groupon and TripAdvisor announced this week.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about those and what you're doing there?
Sure. So, for a long time, we've always looked at our site in partnership in many ways, like Yelp is doing as well. And we've always viewed co-opetition as absolutely critical to our industry. Everything from distributing advertising to what we do with our consumer site. So, we've done integrations with OpenTable, so it was up here earlier, Uber, with Fandango, TripAdvisor, Groupon. So we want to have the best available content on our site and also transactions for the 60 million users that we have across our platform.
Sure, and that also gets to, in terms of, have you thought about sort of developing some of those yourselves? You know, how you decide where you're going to partner and where you're going to build things out.
Sure. In our space, there's so much to do. Recognize all the people that are in here working on so many different things. You can't do it all. So you have to think about, well, what are you really good at, and then go from there. So when it comes on the consumer side, we've always been a great place to have all the data, the best data about all the businesses in the United States. So we started with that and built fundamental capability around data, and then search on top of that. Want to be a great SEO provider and just have basically a great directory. Then on top of that, how do we build services that make it even more compelling? And so that's where we want to partner with best-in-breed companies that can provide those types of services to our users. Because again, we only have so many resources. What's different about our company also is we're a two-sided business. We're a big publisher site with tens of millions of users, and then we're a gigantic sales organization with almost 4,000 people to support and close to 500,000 advertisers. So we spend a lot of technology resources on that side of the business too. So we have partnerships across the entire spectrum.
Right. So and so one of the things there is thinking about how you service the SMBs because of having all of those various partnerships and different ways of bringing them some data and services. So do you still think of yourselves? Do you think of yourselves as an agency in any way because of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how our business has evolved. And so, I've been there since 2008. And when I started, we were two business units of AT&T, and one was this, publisher asset essentially that really had no real technology behind it. And then you had this Yellow Pages Salesforce. So I said, well, what could we do with these things? And really what's evolved over the last 8 years is a marketing agency for small businesses. And that's what our sales force does, which is help those local businesses grow their business. So our mission has been to help local businesses and communities grow, similar to what Thumbtack talked about earlier today. So it's not rocket science what we're all trying to do. It's how well you can do it. And that's where having those local feet on the street that can bring the best products and services to help the local business grow, that's what we do. So it's not print, it's not digital, it's not websites, it's the package.
So then you guys also, because you're bringing everything, you're constantly getting a sense of where the demand is, where the market's going. And so are you getting any particular feedback right now about whether it's shifting more to digital and particular areas of digital that marketers are interested in?
Sure. So, I looked at your research that was up there as well, which is interesting. Which is still a lot of the tried and true methods, still work, right? So we're all trying to maybe shift people away from sometimes faster than where they want to go. So I think it's important to first recognize starting with what works, and then the small businesses are constantly searching for where am I going to get the best ROI, and they're consumers too, and so that's a big part of. So where they, as consumers, are really about, I think the hottest things they talk about be social advertising. How can they participate in that beyond, just creating a Facebook page and managing it themselves and trying to keep up with all that. So how you can provide services to the small business to help them accomplish these tasks, become the most important thing, because there's just too many things to do on their own. But
sure. And one of the things you're doing with SMBs is these summits that you're holding, these events. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure.
When you started them, what they're like,
Sure.
half day, whole day, where you've been doing them, feedback you're getting,
right? So,
and are you getting business back?
Yeah, so good question. So from our perspective, to be successful in the end of the day, you have to provide value. You're not selling something. The worst thing that a small business wants, probably anybody, all of you too, no one wants to be sold to. You know, they really want to know that you're there to help them. So everyone talks about being a consultant. You know, so sometimes it's just a code word for, I'm not really a salesperson, I'm a consultant. So what does it really mean? It means you have to give something without an expectation of necessarily revenue today. So our approach with these summits is to go into local markets.
And what are they called?
The breakthrough summits.
We
call them breakthrough summits. We've done 4 of them so far in major markets. We'll complete 8 here pretty quickly. And we bring in industry experts, other small business owners, other, not just us. Google will come in sometimes too. We'll bring in lots of different resources to really just put on a seminar for the small business and help them become knowledgeable. And of course, we have salespeople around and other people in the company around, and to the extent that we can help them implement what they've learned, we're there to help. But it's more of a medium to longer term investment.
Yeah, and was this a response to just feeling like the SMBs are still really sort of,
yes.
I don't want to say clueless, but.
Well, yeah, there's a constant learning process, and it's constantly changing, and it's, they're not coming conferences like this, they're fixing roofs or whatever it is they're doing. So to the extent that either a local salesperson or a summit like that can help them, that becomes really important. Another thing that we've learned over time, and people keep trying this, which is doing television, we're all advertisers, doing television advertising or other sort of brand campaigns to get consumers, small businesses, I think B2B marketing is more direct marketing, but sort of general advertising just goes past people. I found that it's just not a good use of money. So we're really a direct response business ourselves, so we focus on direct response to small businesses and then the education around that, as well as the same thing with consumers.
Okay, that makes sense. So you keep referencing your salespeople. Your sales force, as you say, was 5,000?
Smaller than that, a little less than 4,000 in the organization.
Less than 4,000, yeah. Okay. That's one of the things people talk about a lot with you guys, so many feet on the street. So are there liabilities just in some ways of having so many feet on the street? And do you have to talk about how you train salespeople and retrain and how they have to sell differently?
Yeah, a sales force can be an asset or it can be a liability. It's very expensive to have a person on it. It's very expensive to bring someone off the street and start them out and then have to build a book of business. So at the end of the day, you have to have enough scale to make it work, enough scale of your existing business. And just to have a sales force, there's sales support that's required, lots of administration, you've got to do commissioning, you get all kinds of recruiting, all the things that you need to do to run a sales force. So having $1 billion of digital advertising revenue gives us the scale to be able to afford the sales force. If you're just starting out, that's really difficult. That's really difficult to do, and it's really hard to go make that work. So, and also to have enough product in your bag, if you will, so that you can get a return on investment on that sales call, which is why a lot of people, if they're going to try direct selling, they're going to do it through telesales, because but that's also then the catch-22 of that is it's harder to sell bigger advertising services because you're competing more and more with the local agency. And that's what I think everyone has to think of. This is what I've seen change in the last 8 years too. The basis of competition was these feet on the street legacy media companies. And then there was the new startups, and they were kind of doing direct self-service that they're trying to, and people can get a certain level of scale with a certain segment doing that. But what the real competitor is now, I think, is these local agencies. We used to call them, I have a guy. But they're not a guy anymore.
How are they a competitor?
Well, so it started out, there was, I have a guy, I've got someone to do my website. My brother, it even started as your brother-in-law, or something like that. All you need is a website and SEO. Or maybe it's one of our former salespeople, or it's someone who's been in one of these companies that, hey, I can go do this. And they focus on lawyers in Nashville. And now there's 5 people in that agency. Maybe there's 10 people, and they're really, really good. They know the keywords. They know the local market. They know, and they can go buy enough or resell enough, and they can work on margins that make it work for them. And so they're formidable competitors that are out there servicing the small business in a good way.
But what's interesting is, you guys have been around, you have these relationships. I feel like the big companies, with all those people, with all of those relationships, should have been the ones sort of pushing the SMBs a bit more, so there kind of isn't the guy, the have a guy.
Right. Well, the have a guy, now what's happened is if you were a small agency that was just a guy, they're starting to become less relevant. So what I'm talking about is there's a sophistication growing at the local level. So you either have to be really sophisticated and very, very local, or you need to be big enough that you have enough breadth of technology and product and differentiation, as well as can wrap enough service around it that you can feel and act local, but compete with more scale. And that's our strategy, and that's how we're competing. If you're in the middle, or you're really small, it's really tough. And so that's when you better partner, with somebody, with somebody else in some way, or if you have some unique thing you can bring to the ecosystem.
So also on the point of sort of the legacy companies, so many were caught in a bind for much of the past decade where print products in decline, digital not quite making up for that.
Right.
So do you think we've passed the tipping point on that yet? And what could publishers have done differently if faced with a situation like that again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a classic innovator's dilemma problem, right, that you run into, which is where you make all your money, you need to keep focusing on it, and it's a completely different skill. So people tried it in different ways, whether it's a completely different division or so forth. What I think most people ran into is you have to have enough to sell, outside of your print. And so for us, that was about having a big enough site and enough traffic on that site, so the 60 million users, but that even wasn't enough to get to $1 billion. So we built out a local ad network, and then we invested in that early. And so, Yelp talked about, they're one of our partners. We distribute, advertising to Yelp as well as Yahoo. We're about accessing all the traffic that's there and making it available. So we treated digital as like, how do we do this at scale so that you have enough to sell? The problem in doing it in search works because there's enough ROI in there. If you're an attorney or somebody else that you can give them a $20 lead, they sell a $10,000 case, they'll do that all day. If you're a content publisher and you're selling CPM-based banner ads, there's just not enough volume to make up for what you could get in a newspaper ad. And I think that's what all legacy media companies are not the same. If you're selling audience display in what became programmatic, low value, it's just not enough there. You can be great, but there's just not enough to go around. And so that's really the issue. And if you're also the other issue, if you don't control the consumer, you don't have enough traffic, your margins don't work. And then you roll that back to having a sales force. Well, you can't be an agency just reselling Google and making 15-20% margins and having to pay a sales force a commission. The math doesn't work for very long, so you better have traffic.
Right. I think that's kind of the problem a lot of people are facing. So I want to go to questions. Any other things, big changes you've seen in, the last 8 years, let's say, transforming the industry, or, maybe since kind of, I guess you got into it.
Right.
Yeah. Or maybe the most interesting ones to you.
Right. To me, it's I think the biggest changes and the toughest thing to manage is the constant fragmentation. It just keeps splintering, whether it's the consumer traffic. So you go back to, who's the member of the Yelp person? Chat. So, when you had the yellow pages, it was a beautiful thing. It was a monopoly, right? And it was easy for the consumer, and it was easy for the advertiser. They're all in one place. Well, then they went to online. They went to lots, and it's so many online sites that are constantly changing. And then mobile. So our traffic is now over half mobile. So we were there day one in the App Store as well. You better keep up and follow the consumer, because what you did today and tomorrow, you could be dead, pretty quick. So the pace of change is dramatic, and then the proliferation of ad products has been fragmentation. So your research that you had up there, I mean, there's lots of bar charts,
right.
Lots of bars. It
right.
used to be 3 bars.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to be that good at so many things.
Right.
And that's a challenge for sellers. It's a challenge for prioritization within your own company. All that stuff just makes it harder to make choices.
Right. So are you anticipating big consolidation?
I think it has to happen. I think there's just too. It's too fragmented. There's no one at real scale. So I think it's important, or whether it's consolidation or really tight partnerships where people really strategic partnerships where they're long term, where people are focusing on certain aspect of it, so it becomes sort of a platform-based ecosystem. So I don't think you actually have to own everything, but certainly you can't have so many people calling on the same advertisers. In fact, here's another interesting thing that we learned in a certain category of small businesses in a certain part of the country actually get together in their industry association and they talk about how they can stiff search providers. Meaning
they can what?
They can stiff search providers,
oh.
meaning that they know, like, hey, I can go sign up for this search engine marketing provider, and I can run for 3 or 4 months, and then I can turn it off and go to the next, and then call the next one, and they'll run the campaign for it. They don't pay their bill, and then they get a win-back call from one of the ones previous, and they sign back up again.
Okay.
So they're,
Interesting. Shouldn't we be outing them?
Well, it's,
right?
Yeah. Well. I don't want to, anyways, it's just something to be careful about because the small business are getting, some of them are unscrupulous and getting smarter. But the level of competition, though, people start getting desperate. They maybe not start following their own policies and credit and things like that. And that's when, churn goes up and bad debt goes up. And anyway, so it's an interesting business that we're all in.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I want to open it up to questions. Questions? How about right there, this gentleman right here?
What is the breakdown of your traffic that you bring to your customers between your own, own traffic, like YP.com, etc., and the traffic you brought them from Yahoo or Yelp? And what do you think about the growth of each in the future?
Yeah, it's a good question that every site should look at. I'm not going to tell you the exact numbers, but I would tell you that we do have very sizable direct traffic, but we have also extremely sizable SEO traffic, not dissimilar to the biggest and best sites in the space. So I think everybody's dependent in some extent, including Yelp and others, TripAdvisor, you name it, on SEO traffic. So you better be really good at it, but you got to also have enough direct. So I feel comfortable with the mix, the mix that we have. Interestingly enough, maybe give you a tip, is on mobile web, we actually have we have more direct traffic percentage-wise on mobile web than we do on online web, which is kind of interesting as the world goes that way. We seem to be getting some more direct loyalty in that direction.
Okay, what else do we have?
My question is around, basically, I've heard that YP has the most Ruby developers in Los Angeles. And as a enterprise company, as your size, how do you retain and attract talent like that, cutting edge level?
Great. Yeah. For a second, I thought you said movie developers.
I know, I did too.
But I think you said
LA.
Ruby developers, right? And you said LA. Okay. I was like, I don't know how to answer that. Okay. Yeah, we do have over 500 product and technology people in our LA office, and a lot of really great code contributing entrepreneurs. Code contributing engineers. Our focus has always been about having we want people that want to solve really big, interesting technical problems. So they get to do things at big scale. So whether it's the folks in our tech ops group who are presenting at the sort of elastic computing things that they're doing at big scale, or whether it's our data scientists who they get called to speak at a lot of conferences. I don't like them to because then they get poached. But we've created an environment where people can come in. Well, it's not a startup, and it's like, okay, you're not gonna, we're not gonna be the next Google, and you're all gonna, retire on your stock options. But if you're an engineer that wants to do really cool stuff, and you want to build something and put it on, a site with 60 million monthly unique users and people to use it, like that's pretty cool. If you want to work, if you're a data scientist, we're dealing with billions of transactions, a day on our big data platform. We were doing big data before people started, calling it big data. So I think that's what attracts the team, and we have an interesting mission, to help local businesses grow, and I think people care about that. And lastly, people have signed up with us to really help with what I think is the most successful old media to new media transition. We're not done yet. We still have a sizable print component, which we don't want to make go away because it still works. But people are on that journey, to be there and part of that team that helped build $1 billion digital business, and then really get to the other side and create a truly sustainable, iconic legacy media business to an iconic digital business. And so it's sort of that combination of mission and projects.
That was a great question. I think that is something a lot of people struggle with. If you're not a startup, if you're a big company, you're not able to offer equity. Sometimes cash is not so interesting. I will take their cash if they don't want it.
Right.
But
that's got to be the people in the work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So great question. Thanks, Peter.
Peter Kresolewski. David, a lot of people were surprised by YP's interest in buying Yahoo. Can you talk about what are some of the interesting points about possibly working with Yahoo?
Oh, I'm not going to answer that question. But
I asked him to ask that.
Right. Yeah. In the end, like she asked about industry consolidation, what I would say is, just again, we see ourselves as a long-term player in the industry. We believe scale is really important. We believe having access to lots of consumers is really important. So, we're going to constantly be looking for partners, opportunities, whether it's business development, corporate development, small acquisitions, combinations, so forth. That's just what smart living companies do. And there's different things you look at, and they don't all work out. But it's important to always be thinking.
Okay. Anyone else? Did I see any other hands?
I think we're between them and lunch.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much, David, and thank you, everyone. Enjoy your lunch.
Okay.
Thank you so much.